Good morning and welcome to RUSI. I'm Malcolm Chalmers. I'm the Deputy Director General here, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this event, and in particular to welcome His Excellency Dr. Al-Attiyah, to the Minister of State for Defence and the Deputy Prime Minister of Qatar. I'm looking forward to his reflections on the security situation in his region, and in particular the role of the broader defence relationship between the UK and Qatar, where of course there have been some significant recent developments. But I think it's important to remind ourselves that those recent developments are the latest stage in a very long-standing relationship between the UK and Qatar, really going back to the emergence of Qatar as an independent political entity and continuing through into the 21st century. And I'm particularly proud that there's also a long-standing relationship between RUSI and Qatar, and I think a successful relationship from our point of view. And I've had over the last 3 years had the pleasure of teaching and indeed learning from successive cohorts of your diplomats as they've spent time here at RUSI. And I must say, a very impressive, diligent and thoughtful group of young men and women of whom your country should be proud. And more recently also training a number of Qatari officers from the Ministry of Defence, again a most fruitful series of events. And not least, RUSI also had the honour to host the Westminster Counter-Terrorism Conference on the 23rd of November, where your Foreign Minister spoke. So I'm absolutely delighted to, on behalf of RUSI, welcome you to this event. The format is that, again, we're delighted that General Sir Simon Mail has agreed to chair this event, and he will explain the format further in a moment, because Simon is a long-standing expert in a long-standing pillar, I think, of our government's relationships, defence relationships, but more broadly security relationships with this region, and understands, I think, the region, particularly the military and security dimensions, more perhaps than almost any other living Briton still actively engaged in these issues. So Simon, we're absolutely delighted that you've agreed to chair this meeting for you, and over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Malcolm. And may I add my own greetings, Your Excellency, to back to London. I know how often you are here. I would like to say it's a real pleasure to see the Defence Minister here. It is marked the fact that he is happy for the both what he is going to say formally and in Q&A to be on the record. I think that's a mark of the confidence that he has in London, in RUSI, and in the relationship with the United Kingdom. When I was the Defence Senior Advisor on the Middle East, I was paid for also, not by the Ministry of Defence, also by DFID and the FCO. And I used to go over to the FCO when I knew a minister was going to the Gulf and say, would it be helpful if I came to the Gulf with you, given that security is such a major part and defence such a major part? And they'd also, no, thank you, General. We're only talking foreign policy issues. And you thought, what on earth can you imagine it would not be relevant to foreign policy in a part of the world like the Gulf that would not involve defence and security? And our friends of the Gulf would never draw that distinction. And as those of you who have read His Excellency's biographical notes, you will know he is a soldier. I use that in the broadest terms, a fighter pilot. He is a military man. I hope he will be getting into the cockpit of a Typhoon in due course and putting it through its whatever in the air. He has been the Minister of International Cooperation. He has been a Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and now not just Deputy Prime Minister, but here as Minister of Defence. And so he will totally understand, from a Qatari point of view, the importance and interlinkage between intelligence, between security, defence, foreign policy. And he has been, as you can imagine, in the last few years in those appointments and his current one, absolutely in the thick of what is going on both globally and regionally where it is relevant to the Middle East and to the Gulf and to Qatar. I think I would like to say, I hope the Minister is going to reiterate that the bilateral relationship between the United Kingdom and Qatar is excellent. But we were undoubtedly, after the 5th of June, as His Excellency pointed out, we have the 6th of June D-Day. For them, the 5th of June, the day of the embargo, is a major event in Qatari history. But we were slightly slow off the mark. And it is interesting when we talk about Turkey, where we were very quick off the mark in terms of demonstrating our support for the democratic process in Turkey. We were slow with a great friend like Qatar. And again, you know, it's, our good friends are quite, and they're both welcome and should be telling us where they think we fall short of the type of support we should be giving them. And the importance, you know, you can see it on the skyline of London. We know, for those who understand the energy business, how vital LNG from Qatar is for the whole energy equation here in the United Kingdom. And most recently, the commitment to 24 Typhoon, Hawk, and the Shared Squadron, which is a very new development. And these relationships are not just about money. Of course, that's important, but people keep focusing. It is the relationship. And His Excellency, as a pilot, will know the formative influences from young Qatari pilots who are going to be flying alongside the Royal Air Force as they develop and bring Typhoon into service is a 25-year relationship. And that is why I've always been hugely on the back of that. I will simply say, you know, since 1995, Qatar has absolutely sprung to prominence, as we all know, in every sphere. But I think it's fair to say that since 2011, perhaps fault lines in what we assume to be was rather a common approach to issues in the Gulf and the wider Middle Eastern region, with the onset of the Arab Spring, did reveal some very interesting fault lines between Qatar's ideology, politics, foreign policy objectives, defense, and other members of the GCC. And again, those of you who have watched it, it came really, I suppose, focused in on Libya, yes, Syria, yes, issues to do with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And I don't know if His Excellency is going to refer to them, but it may well be something you will wish to draw out in questions. And we are aware that Amir Tamim, who we know well, product of Sandhurst, another great linkage with Qatar, went to Riyadh to King Abdullah, and there were discussions about varied issues and priorities. With perhaps a new administration in Washington, clearly with a change of personality in Saudi Arabia, issues over Yemen, issues still over Syria. We know on the 5th of June last year that rumbling discontent between GCC members became very, very public. And we are still working through the consequences of that, and I hope we'll be able to draw His Excellency on those. So, sir, with that as a bit of a background, just to bring people up, we'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say, and then I hope we'll be able to take some of the themes out in question time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Lesson learned this morning: never have a long walk knowing that you'll have a warm reception. Answer, you will sweat. So, excuse me. General Mayor, thank you again, and honorable lords, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to be here this morning. The Royal United Service Institute has been a trusted partner in the providing training courses to our diplomat at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs since 2014. And we have expanded the cooperation to include an officers training program, which has recently graduated 20 of our mid to high ranking officers that have since returned home better equipped to serve our nation and advance our defense and intelligence capability through implementing what they have gained here. So thank you, Rossi, for that. I'm especially pleased to be back in the UK. The United Kingdom holds a very special place in my heart, for it was here in the skies above RAF Valley in Wales that I flew as a young fighter pilot in training. I have since retired my flying suit and hung up my wings. But the memories of those days and the camaraderie I had built with my fellow cadets have remained with me since ever. My current visit to London makes an important moment in our continuous effort to engage with our allies here in the United Kingdom and to further advance and solidify our strategic military-to-military relationship. We have recently signed a landmark defense cooperation agreement with the United Kingdom concerning the purchase of 24 Typhoons, 9 Hawks. This agreement built on the historical friendship that joined both nations and further advanced the strategical defense partnership that aimed to serve our common security objectives. The deal has also contributed directly to the preservation and creation of tens of thousands of jobs here in the UK. We have also agreed on the establishment of Joint Operational Squadron, as General may say, which will ensure our mutual combat readiness. Further, our joint action in combating terrorism and advancing our strategy effort toward the stability of our region and beyond. This squadron will also play a vital role in securing our skies during the 2022 World Cup, which, despite some people fruitless effort, will be hosted by the State of Qatar. Dear audience, Qatar has spared no effort in its fight toward countering terrorism ideology and eradication terrorism in all its forms. We have provided operational and technical support to our allies and have joined in the fight to ensure the groups that violate international law, commit gross systematic abuse of human rights, and terrorize entire community are brought to justice. We have also taken the fight beyond the battlefield by funding education and developing programs all across the Arab region and beyond. Qatar organizations such as Education Above All, which through its program of education, Educate a Child, has made a commitment to providing access to quality education for tens of millions of children around the globe. To date, the program has provided 9 million out-of-school children access to quality primary education through operating in 54 countries around the world. Our laws and legislation further reflect our commitment in bolstering the truly global fight against terrorism and terror finance. Sir, if you would allow me, I would like to take advantage of this platform to briefly speak about effect that the recent arbitrary measures taken by the so-called quartet have had on my country. As most of you are actually aware by now, on the 5th of June of last year, the Qatari government and its people were ambushed by the decision of the 3 Gulf states to cut their economy, political, military, and social ties with the State of Qatar. This extraordinary measure did not stop there. Qatar's only land border was shut down, and our people were forcibly separated from their families living in our neighborhood country. The recent release of the United Nations Office of the High Commission for Human Rights report that outlined the humanitarian violation perpetrated by the unilateral, coercive measure undertaken by the quartet enforced Qatar assertion of the illegality and humanity of their action toward the people of Qatar. I look forward to delving deeper into this issue during our discussion, but allow me to add this. I stand before you today, a very proud man, a man proud by the level of commitment that the men and women of Qatar have demonstrated toward upholding our country's sovereignty and freedom. I am proud of their dignity and resolve during this hard time. They attempted to belittle our nation by referring to the size of our land or our population. However, let me tell you, that is not how we measure the size of country. We measure it by contribution that country has made toward the advancement of humankind through discipline, such as the art and science. We measure it by the value of human right, tolerance, and the rule of law that a country is committed to achieving and upholding. And it is through that, and through the yardstick, we measure, and through this yardstick, we measure ourselves in Qatar. Thank you. I am very looking forward to our discussion, General. Thank you again.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, His Excellency has obviously referred to the military, and it is again interesting how people fail to spot the contribution that Qatar has made with Al Udeid, which again, those of you who've been out there, an absolute vital hub for CENTCOM, and it just showed a little bit of a disconnect in the American, frankly, psyche that to fail to spot the importance of the mosaic of relationships out in the Gulf. And I can say, as having known the defense minister's predecessors before and the current chief of staff, who we had many discussions with. But let's open the thing. If people just catch my eye, and I know, Lord Arbuthnot, could you start the bowling, to use a...
General Simon, thank you very much. Minister, thank you very much. You said some important things this morning. And can I just begin as a senior associate fellow of RUSI by saying how very much we welcome the relationship between Qatar and RUSI. And echoing what Malcolm has said. Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed is clearly deeply concerned about the relationship between Qatar and the Muslim Brotherhood. Are you able to say anything about that relationship and what you see the future might be in that respect?
I cannot speak for Mohammed bin Zayed, but I can tell you that since 1995 in Qatar, we choose not to be belonging to any blocks A or Block B in the region. And all of you who knows the region knows that the bid for power in the region are between two blocks. And we decided to find our way. We decided at that time to create our own platform to everyone who is not belonging to this bloc to come and exchange their thought and idea. So you will hear from here and then that Qatar is pro-brotherhood or Qatar is pro this group or that group. And this is actually not true. And there are so many facts which show you that, for example, the most worrying part on this may be Egypt. Maybe Mohammed Zayed is referring to Egypt. And we dealt with Egypt from the day Tantawi resumed power until the date Sisi resumed power. So we dealt with all this government entity. And the end of the day, we dealt with government. We didn't deal, and we don't deal with parties. So if I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentleman here, please.
Good morning, Minister. Thank you very much for your comments. Justin Ronk, I am Research Fellow for Air Power here at RUSI. I was wondering if you could comment, as I understand the frontline fast jet fleet in the Qatari Air Force at the moment is composed mainly of 9 Mirage 2000s. And on the order books now, Qatar has at least 90, at least 96 I think, with options for more 4.5 generation fast jets, F-15 Rafale and Typhoon. I was wondering if you could comment, given, as you yourself know very well, the requirements for QFI and QWI time in pilot training, how Qatar plans to generate the pool of pilots required, the size of pilot pool required to operate that sort of fast jet fleet over the next 10 years?
Before 5 or 6 years ago, we've been heavily dependent training our pilots abroad, for example, UK and other countries. But 3 years ago, we had our own standalone Air Academy, and it is capable of training and graduating so many of the pilots who will be, operating all this equipment which we bought. But this numbers is yes, and as you said, it might increase. we are facing on the region an unconventional enemy, as of all of you knows now. And it is not wise, we find out it is not wise to heavily depend on our ally to come and fight for us, or to enhance the stability in the region by calling every time our allies and put the burden on their shoulder. So we decided that this job should be done by the people of Qatar. And this is why we are enhancing our military capabilities. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Lady there, please.
So much for your presentation and for your speech, Your Excellency. My question is the following. Diana Galeva, Darwin University. In 2006, Qatar took on responsibilities of rebuilding Hezbollah's stronghold areas after its war with Israel. In 2008, Qatar also mediated between the Iranian-backed militia and the Lebanese government. And we know that during the Syrian war, Qatar also helped in the bodies of mediation between Al-Mustafa and Hezbollah in 2017. Please, can you kindly comment the Qatar's strategic approach towards Hezbollah? Is it a threat, is it a ally, or a neutral actor, especially according to the nowadays realities and refugee political crisis?
Thank you. I am proud being a Qatari. Qatar is a unique on mediation, and this takes us back to the non-belonging of any of the blocs, that you have a freedom to maneuver and mediate between parties who are in dispute. We did this in so many places, not only in Lebanon. We did this between Djibouti and Eritrea. We did this in Yemen, 2009, between Ali Abdullah Saleh and Al-Houthi at that time. There is so many. We did this in Darfur in Sudan. We preserved a war there, and we developed Darfur. Refugees came back to their home. So this is the line that Qatar decided to fly. Now, going back to the relation with parties or group, I assure you here that Qatar never deals with individual or party. Qatar deals only with governments, and Qatar acts always according to a request from such government. So if you go back to the recent history, you will find out that whenever we are mediating, our mediation is upon a call from the United Nations, or from friends and allies, or from countries affected themselves. Thank you.
Lady there, please. You're welcome.
You recently unveiled some new defense equipment at your National Day parades. This included some ballistic missiles from China and some Turkish armored vehicles. Can we expect to see defense relationships with these countries growing, and any future equipment purchases?
Turkey and China are friends to Qatar. With Turkey, we have a strategical partnership to enhance and diversify our defense capability. We need to reach out to a friendly country. And all this done as we did with the UK. We bought the Typhoon from the UK, F-15 from the United States, Rafale from France, and the same things goes to Turkey and China as well. So Qatar has a 360 good relationship with so many countries that we can, have a good mutual cooperation between these entities.
I think it partly makes the point I was making earlier. Some people are better at aligning their foreign policy with their defence objectives, with their prosperity agenda, that sometimes I feel rather critical about our own government for not pursuing it quite so
But don't worry,
aggressively.
the Chinese missile will not reach here. Don't worry.
Gentleman there, listen to me.
Minister, Ben Flanagan from Arab News. Over the last, thanks. Ben Flanagan from Arab News. Over the last few days, it's emerged that some Qatari fighter jets intercepted at least 2 passenger planes from the UAE in the Gulf airspace. Do you acknowledge that happened? Why did it happen? And do you see this happening again? And what kind of impact do you think this will have on the dispute in the region?
No, thank you for your question. I just want to tell you something. If someone habit is, if someone habit to lie, he will lie 100 times. And we always tell our embargoed country that if you lie, at least have a good memory. So this is a false allegation altogether. And people who have hijacked or attacked your national agency, proven by the FBI that they attacked your national agency and hacked it and put false statement, proven by decent agencies, whether they are in UK or the FBI, you can expect anything from them. And this is one of their lies. I think they hold a Qatari so-called opposition in Abu Dhabi, and he have give a statement, if you are following, that he holds Abu Dhabi account of his life if they don't release him. And they wanted to cover up the story, I believe, so they made this a story. They just want to make a bubble around the story. But in fact, in 21st of December, they have violated our airspace, one of their fighter jets. And we were very confident. We went through the proper channel, international legal tools, and we filed a claim to the National Security and to the General Assembly. So if they have any proof, I think today this can be believed by normal people, but people, an expert such as your good, honorable man, I think you will find out. There is radars, there is technology today, so.
But the Bahrainis released the radar footage which shows the jets very clearly intercepting these passenger aircraft. So, I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, Bahrainis are again with the quartet. They are linked to them. So this image does not show people from a distance what they mean. You need to analyze them and see what they are talking about. You have an airway 23,000 and above feet. I don't want to speak technicality here, but I'll just give you a small example. If the airways is 23 and above, and a fighter jet is flying at 9,000 feet, crossing their area, their regional water, that does not mean you are intercepting anyone. And the American airbase in Qatar has released a statement saying that it's not to our knowledge that any incident happened there. Al-Arabiya from Emirates, I think, Al-Arabiya airline, Dubai airline, Fly Dubai, I think, they have denied this incident.
But there were Qatari fighter jets in the area.
Sorry?
There were Qatari.
No, Qatar. There is. When you are in your country, you train your pilots every day. So there is an activity everywhere, every day, but not to intercept or to come near any civilian jets. Clearly, their story is false.
Thank you. We'll move on. Gentleman in the second row, please. Over the bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Bill Law, the Gulf Matters. Thank you, Minister, for your statements. And just following off on that question, and I appreciate that you're saying that the claims are false, and the quartet has somewhat of a history in making false claims. Are you at all concerned that this is a ratcheting up of the situation, and are there any anxieties in Qatar that there may be some sort of serious military intervention?
Well, Qatar from day one have said this loud and clear, that dialogue is the only way, short and solid, to reach to a settlement. And we supported Sheikh Sabah from Kuwait Initiative, and we said that, we keep saying this, and we will remain, enhancing that the dialogue is the only way out. It is not in the benefit of anyone. Qatar, a country capable of defending itself, there is no doubt, but this is not the issue. The issue is the region. This is the only coherent entity on the Arab world still intact. And with this, sorry to say this, with childish and narrow vision, we don't know where they want to drive this region to. They are definitely doing this and inviting another player, knowing or not knowing, but they are inviting other players to the region, whether they know this or not.
Can I just take a little bit of on that, about the future of the GCC? We've got a number of more questions. How do you see the GCC? Because clearly you've enhanced your relationship with Iran. You've invited the Turks, Turkey in as another guarantor of security, as well as other friends. Clearly, we know Oman, Kuwait are worried about certain elements within the GCC. I just wonder if you see the future of that. Is this a mendable relationship, or has this really?
General, I'll be lying to you if I say the GCC will be back as it was before. But still, we have to fight to keep this GCC coherent. Now, the rule of the games will change for sure. We need to have a clear mechanism for the future of GCC for dispute resolution. We have to be, in the previous days, there was the personal relation who solve, the differences between the country. Today, I believe if we want to keep the GCC intact, I think we need to have a very clear mechanism on how we solve our dispute among each other, and we don't lose the hope. GCC social fabric is very coherent, despite the tears that they made to this fabric by separating families from each other, closing the border, ripping off child from their mothers in the airport, and so they did ugly things during the past 6-7 months. Still, again, I'm saying that the GCC must stay coherent, and the only way is dialogue and to have a clear mechanism.
Right, thank you very much. Please, to the back.
Tobias Borkham, an Associate Fellow here at RUSI. Your Excellency, my question follows on from Sir Simon's. It's about regional order. And going forward, I'd like your perspective on how you see a variety of actors in that regional order, what kind of contribution they can make to regional order and stability. And sort of, if you don't mind, give us an impression of 3 different tiers. One would be the big global powers, US, Russia, China maybe. What role do you see for them in the region? The other would be the non-Arab powers, so especially Iran and Turkey. And then finally, I'd be interested in what role do you see for Qatar as a regional player and as a player that tries to work towards regional order and stability? Thank you.
Thank you. In my opinion, I believe that it is more of the West and the United States who should put more effort to solve this issue. Historically speaking, they are our ally for decades. They know the region very well. The only thing we should do together, whether us or the Western Hemisphere till the United States, is to try to think out of the box and not to focus on our narrow interest in each individual. Because narrow interest in each individual might work for a short time, but in the long run, I think it will be, fire back. So with more pressure, the voice should be louder. That's irresponsible figures who are trying to drag this area to a very dark tunnel should understand that they are not jeopardizing their own interest, they are jeopardizing the international interest. And I will focus on Qatar. Today, Qatar have a responsibility for a secure flow of natural gas. I won't speak about our cooperation in education. I have touched on the defense or the other manner of cooperation we have with you or with the American. But Qatar have an obligation now to secure a safe flow of energy to the world. Any single lamp today in any place have almost 30% of Qatar energy in it. And that's mean if anything went wrong in that region, so many countries around the world will be affected. This is why we should look broader than the very narrow interest that, well, I would like to deal with this country, it is bigger, it is, will purchase more. This does not work. It has to be looked, from high altitudes.
Great. Jump on that, please.
Your Excellency, Hugh Ward from Saab. So there's a slightly complicated, I've been trying to work out how to make this a clear and concise question. You talked about a joint squadron. So a squadron of aircraft creating an operational capability, but the emphasis of this question will be, you also talked about investing in communities before conflict happens. So preventing the beginning of a conflict. And you talked about education, and you talked about a drive towards education. So effectively the next generation are less likely to want to be part of conflict. Terrorists and criminals are less likely to be able to survive within those communities. I was just thinking that given the UK government are trying to change the rules on official development assistance, and given the Sustainable Development Goals don't really cover security, is there now, given what Qatar has learned, is there an opportunity for Qatar and the UK to work together in a more coherent way to look at how to invest in fragile and conflict-affected states to prevent the beginnings of conflict?
Thank you. This is exactly what we are trying to do, but before that, let me tell you how some of our friends and allies in the West look at, combating terrorism. They look at it as a nail and a hammer. Well, fine, we agree that it has to have a hard power against terrorist and terrorist group. But in Qatar, we believe in something extra. And we have an experience, by the way. This is from experience. This is from the previous days of Afghanistan in the 80s and how we dealt with some of the individual. And we find out that better education, development help a lot and diffuse a lot of terrorism and their ideology. And we tried this in Darfur too when we do the development. So it is not only the nail and hammer. Nail and hammer is needed, but on the other hand, development and education. And this is why, when I said in my statement that Qatar have taught 9 million child, it's literally 9 million child. Facts, numbers. And this program will go beyond. We will target 100 million if we can. But one hand cannot clap solo. We need our friends, we need our ally. And yes, I agree with you. We started to work with our friends in the UK that we can have joint programs together. Thank you.
Gentleman at the back. Okay, thanks. Neil.
Thank you, Excellency. Neil Brown, member of RUSI. Can I tie together two comments that the General and you made? You referred to the US as your historic ally. In his introduction, the General referred to, in relation to the 5th of June, to some in the US administration who overlooked the importance of Al Udeid. So with that in mind, can I ask, what is your hopes for what President Trump will do with the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal? And what are your aspirations for steps taken by the EU and others to engage Iran on other behavior, like its missile development, like its support to Hezbollah and the Houthis?
You know, it is difficult to change geography, and you know, if someone will like to touch on this, he should be, you know, more close to the region to see how complicated is the interaction in our region between the neighbors. And Qatar was from day one pro the 5+1 negotiation. We have called in so many platforms that dialogue is the way, and it is again we believe the only way, because if God forbidden anything happen in our region, it will turn to a, you know, chaos. So we have supported the negotiation. We have supported the outcome, and we still, you know, we still encourage all the parties that to keep whatever differences they have around table. And you know, I am sure it might take longer, but I'm sure it will get to a fruitful result. Thank you.
Mike, please.
Your Excellency, Mike Harwood, semi-retired Air Marshal. You never retire ever. We've touched on some of it, I think, with the questions in a way, is this idea of education. And your own career, you know, starting as a fighter pilot, but then you just won't stop, and you end up with a PhD, and you've gone through all that process, and you've covered so many different disciplines to end up to be able to be a credible minister. If I go back to the very young, though, so young teenagers, 13, 14, are there specific initiatives you're looking at to encourage them and then to go into government business, security, defense, let alone flying a Typhoon? But there are so many jobs where you need good citizens. What are you doing at that really early age?
Yes, we, first of all, let me tell you something, my friend. If you are a fighter pilot, your ambition is the horizon. You know, you don't have anything to stop you. But your specific question, we started now to be specialized, you know, in the program we need to for our children. For example, we started now to introduce STEM school, which start from the 7th grade to 12th grade. And through this STEM schools, we are encouraging our young lad to penetrate the scientific and technology world. So to prepare them, you know, for a tougher, I think, tougher environment or life they will be facing. In our days, you know, we barely have a, you know, box phone. Today, the technology is everywhere, and you need to prepare this generation. And this is what we have to start. And in all levels, in the defense, we have education in the defense, and we start to introduce this type of schools. Ministry of Education is starting to introduce such schools, and encouraging also the private sector to have similar schools to educate our young lads on this.
You did bring in a type of national service, didn't you?
Yeah, national service now is in place, but we are going to issue a new law maybe in March to prolong the period of national service and to include you know, academics in it as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, please.
Hokin Walker, retired diplomat. Your Excellency, Qatar has a very significant hydrocarbons relationship with Iran. In the context of what you're talking about, should we see this as just a commercial, long-term commercial agreement based on topography, or should we see it in the context you've been describing, Qatar being friendly with all states, or is there a special relationship?
As I said in the beginning, that we would like to have zero enemy, looking at the circumstances and the region and the surrounding environment. But yes, we have the largest gas field shared with Iran. So we didn't make this, it's natural. And we have a lot of, you know, a lot of opportunity to go closer to Iran after the embargo. But we decided that Iranian reach out to us, and we have to thank them for this. They opened their airways. The only airway we have is through Iran today, and they supplied us with food and medicine. And this is the ceiling of cooperation we are having with Iran today.
Gentleman there first, and then I've got two more behind him.
Mr. Minister, Robert Wall with the Wall Street Journal. I'm just curious, it seems like the situation has just kind of run itself to ground, and we could have the status quo for, you know, months, if not years. What prospects do you see for actually some sort of mediation, dialogue, someone intervening, stepping in to make sure this doesn't become a, you know, the new normal for the region?
I think the quartet should realize that what they are doing is harming, in fact, their own interest as well. But speaking of Qatar, we started from 6th of June. 5th of June is the embargo. 6th of June, we started to enhance our bilateral relation with our friends around the world. We have a good relation with most of the world, and we started to build on this. And I think we have decided our destiny. We would like, as I said, strongly to keep the GCC coherence intact, but in the end of the day, we have our people to look after.
Gentleman in front, please.
Thank you very much for your talk. My name is Hamza Chaban. I'm a master's student, international relations at the LSE. There's been reports in the Turkish media that the Turkish special forces foiled an attempted coup on Sheikh Tamim on the 5th of June by the Quartet. How accurate are these reports? And on another note, you accused the Quartet of inviting foreign intervention into the region, but you're asking the US and the UK to solve the conflict. And given the special relationship between Mohammed bin Salman and Trump now, do you think the US is a honest broker for the conflict? Thank you.
Your questions need, you know, I need to write a book on your questions. But I'll make it short and crispy for you. First of all, I want to make it, you know, clear that Qatar capable of defending its regime by its own people. So we don't need to have a third party to come and defend our emir or our regime. We can do it. Now, the relation between us and Turkey is under the sunshine. We have a strategic relation. We have a defense cooperation agreement, and we have a deployment agreement with Turks, and they are with us. They are with us in Qatar. We do training, we do exercise together, and this is our military relation with Turkey. Secondly, the United States is a global power, so it's a global reach. You know, you cannot put the United States on a mold that it is a broker. The United States has an interest in the region, and United States, yes, it is President Trump, but it is the institution as well. And they all know the interest on the region, and it's like a domino effect, and they understand this very well. So you have to keep, you know, you have to keep the clock running smooth for everyone.
Thank you. Lady here, please.
I was just wondering, can you see an end to this crisis, and what lessons Qatar has learned from it?
Oh, we learned a lot. Yes. Resilient and independent. We kept our sovereignty intact, you know, and this is something which we have benefited out of this crisis, that we prove to the world that no one can tamper with our sovereignty. Now, do I see an end to it? Everything everything in the world starts small and grow, but crisis. They start big and then they get smaller. So I believe I'm optimistic. We'll get there.
Now we've got a little bit, just a touch. If anybody has a burning question they'd like to go to His Excellency, be very, very candid and very open. Please, the gentleman there.
Iyad Hamid from Al Arabi Jadid. What is the Qatari stand on the Syrian peace process negotiations? And probably you can tell us a little bit about the Turkish anticipated operation in northern Syria?
Which negotiation? Which peace negotiation? We have 5 or 6.
Well, Nasser
there is
was
one in precisely. Syria has been long suffering, and if we want to keep the sorry for me being blunt on this, if you want us to keep our hypocrite aside, we have to we have to look at Syria in this perspective. That everybody has came to Syria and fought, the Syrian people, with all the modern equipment in the world. Still, no solution in Syria. So why don't we listen to the people, simply what the people want, and give them what they want? I think then and only you will solve Syria situation. The same goes to Yemen, the same goes to Libya. We do everything we can with hammering the nail, but we never ask the people what they want. Simply. Thank you.
Please.
Your Excellency, Paul Brennan from Al Jazeera English. You're vastly increasing the size of your Air Force over a period of the next several years. I'd like to build on a question from one of the Associate Fellows from RUSI that was asking earlier about the strategic intent of that. Where do you see the threats? Why are you feeling it so necessary to increase your Air Force to such a degree? Give me some insight, please, or us some insight, please, into where you see the threats coming in the region in the coming years.
I'm a Minister of Defense, my friend, so it's not only the Air Force. We are increasing on 360. And as I said in the beginning, we are facing unconventional enemy. And I think we should be ready to engage and counter this enemy with our own people, beside our allied friends. And then again, we've been depending heavily on our friend and ally, and this is why you see the community on, the West or in America started to get bored from us calling 999 or 911 every time, or call for SOS. And this is why we should be ready to engage ourselves with our friends. And in this case, you have to enhance your defense capability. And this is what we decided to do.
One last question, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and we are so pleased to meet you here. I'm Saifuddin Al-Daraji from Iraqi Embassy. Your Excellency, I would like to ask you about the relation. How do you see the relation between Iraq and Qatar, and is there any military cooperation in this regard?
Yes,
between two Ministry of Defense, I mean.
Yes. In fact, we have a very good relation with the government in Iraq. I myself visited Baghdad 2 years ago, and I went and I saw my counterpart there. We're trying to enhance this relation with the Iraqi government. We try to encourage all the Iraqi, to line up behind their politician, because I think, Iraq deserves some attention from everyone to bring Iraq back to where it's belong. Iraq, the cultural, Iraq, the depth in cultural education. So yes, Qatar is doing so many things to enhance and bring back this warm relation with our fellow Iraqis.
Right. Well, we've run out of time. Before I ask everybody here to join me and thank you very much, I think we're all aware of the importance of Qatar. Qatar absolutely burst on the scene, has transferred huge national wealth into a vital part of the mosaic of the global economy, and not just the economy through investment, and obviously the translation of that energy wealth into investment. I mentioned United Kingdom, the London landscape, etc., but a whole load of other parts of the world. It is an absolutely keystone for a small country. And every time I go to Qatar, I'm, buoyed up by the ambition and the aspiration. And as I say, I have a lot of friends there. It's very important to the United Kingdom. I am delighted. I worked very much in my time to make the case with the Qatari, the senior leadership of the Qataris, that they should invest in this defence relationship through Typhoon, which we think is, obviously I would be saying we think the best Generation 4.5 fighter in the world. But I'm delighted for all the spin-offs to do with relationships and confirmation of that. We had all, and the ministers referred to this earlier, looked on the one part of the Middle East that looked stable was the GCC. And I use that as a group. We knew there were familial and historical strains and stresses there, but we had huge hope that, particularly for the United Kingdom, because of our historical and monarchical and military connections there, had really hoped for that. That has proved not to be the case. A number of you have referred to how long this might last. I'm sure from a selfish British point of view, but I would say much wider, global point of view, we want to find a resolution. I'm absolutely convinced most of the people in the GCC who have found themselves drawn into this standoff would probably like to find the way out. I think the United Kingdom is singularly well positioned to be an honest broker where we can. It is obviously for the countries in the region to make that, but I do think we should be doing whatever we can not to make this the new normal. I think stability in the Gulf is so important for the wider region. It really is absolutely critical, and we've just got to find a way through that. But Your Excellency, very good to see you in London. Thank you very much.
General, if you allow me to say...
Oh, please. I was just going to say, would you like to...
the joint squad thing. I have Brigadier Jassim here. He is the director of the Typhoon program. And he's not happy that I didn't speak enough about the level of relation between us and the UK, especially in the joint squadron thing. And I believe this joint squadron is the first of its kind since the 40s. United Kingdom used to have a joint squadron with Poland and Belgium and this is the first time since 1940s we have such a squadron between us and the United Kingdom. And that shows you how is the military to military and defense to defense relation is growing between us and the UK. And General Mel, thank you very much for receiving me. I've been, under this integration lights.
You haven't cooled down one jot since you spilled over here at speed.
Your presence has made me forget London, weather now. So it was warm received. Thank you.
Can you join me all, please, in thanking His Excellency for being here?